What a fantastic discussion that highlighted the strategic significance of Diriyah in terms of its location and climate. Who knew that academic research and methodology can be fun and engaging? We would like to thank Professor Shomen for moderating that insightful panel. Building on the insights of our previous panel, which explored methodologies for studying ancient trade routes and their intersections, we now turn to the intersection of natural heritage and sustainability, an equally vital aspect of understanding our shared past and shaping our future. Our next panel, titled Natural Heritage and Sustainability, the Ecology of Diriyah, delves into the natural heritage of Wadi Hanifa. Drawing on findings from the Wadi Hanifa Natural Heritage Survey, this discussion will shed light on the region's biodiversity, geographical evolution, and the intricate relationship between natural resources and human activity over the centuries. Moderating this panel is Dr. Paulette Wallace, Associate Director of the Wadi Hanifa Natural Heritage at the Diriyah Gate Development Authority. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Paulette Wallace to the stage.
Thank you very much for joining us for today's really important session that we're going to teach you and encourage you and enthuse you about natural heritage, and the natural heritage specifically of Wadi Hanifa. Now, we have a large team, and our team is interdisciplinary, made up of staff from Diriyah Gate Development Authority, so the Diriyah Foundation team, in addition to staff from AESG and so we have ecologists, we have cultural heritage professionals, and we have natural heritage professionals, and we're all working together. So let's make a start. Ooh. Okay, so we're going to have 4 parts to our session today. The first part, we're going to touch on introducing what is natural heritage. Then we'll move on to telling you a bit about the Wadi Hanifa Ecological Survey. Then we'll touch on the work that we've been doing around tree tagging and the work that we've found out from actually counting the trees that we have within Wadi Hanifa. And then we'll move on to our palm trees operations on the ground, so palm and native trees. Now, so what is natural heritage? So natural heritage is the areas, the processes, the resources that are recognised for their scientific or for their ecological or for their landscape values. Now, when we start to bring landscape values into any kind of assessment, we're thinking about people's intangible heritage. So natural heritage is actually more than trees. Natural heritage is the trees, the soil, the surroundings, and for us it's also the geology, the hydrology, the habitat and the ecosystems. So just think about that as we go through our presentation today. Now, how does natural heritage assist us to think about Diriyah as a crossroads for trade and tradition? We're all here over the couple of days for the symposium, for the seminar, to think about, well, what was the role of Diriyah? Now, natural heritage enables us to recognise that there was a large, well, Wadi Hanifa, which is very nearby to us, where Diriyah is attached, connected to Wadi Hanifa. Wadi Hanifa, to one flank, has the large Tawaik Mountains. So we have this large geological area. We have a cutting through that area that brings us a water, or an aquifer also underground. And then we have a desert area. So the actual topography of Wadi Hanifa supports people to use this water source, to use this valley to transport themselves, to transport goods, to transport knowledge. And Wadi Hanifa and Diriyah have been at the centre of this movement within the Najd. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Alejandra to carry on.
So Wadi Hanifa is this important landscape feature in the Central Arabian Peninsula, and it has been key for the sustainment of life, both of humans, but also a wild biodiversity of plants and animals. Now, the archaeological records said that the first humans that inhabited the Arabian Peninsula came to the region around 150,000 years ago. We know these dates more because it's more or less the time when our ancestors were migrating out of Africa to expand to other continents, and the Arabian Peninsula is the first stop. So you can imagine that our ancestors first discovered Wadi Hanifa with the flourishing lands, with the water resources, and also the different plants that were providing sustenance. Back then, they were gatherer hunters, so they were not establishing permanent populations around the wadi, but probably they were just nearby. Now, over time, thousands of years after that, during the Neolithic, about 80,000 years ago, humans developed certain techniques for plant domestication, so agriculture was born. Now, at that moment, we expect some permanent populations around the Wadi Hanifa, and many, many more years later, new different crops came apart from the wild vegetation that existed there at that moment. Now, when the communities and populations develop next to water and also based on agricultural practices, usually the life is structured in a way that it follows the season, right? So the wadi follows the rain to be replenished, and also the dry seasons will just have a depletion of also the plants, for example. Now, so these populations living along a wadi and along a water source will develop certain traditions, certain cultures that will follow that natural schedule. So you can imagine these populations initially settling there, developing some time for preparing the land, some time for planting, and some time for harvesting. Now, we do not have the record for Wadi Hanifa itself, but we know many more societies worldwide that usually have certain festivities around the harvest because it's a time of abundance. So people are happy, people know that they have sustenance for the following months. So festivities come around. And although we do not have that record for the Wadi Hanifa, it probably existed. But we today somehow follow that seasonality as well. So yesterday, Jerry was saying in the introductory talk that the Diriyah season is starting, and also the Jeddah season, Riyadh season is starting. So somehow our life still driven by this seasonality. Now, my colleague was telling us about the trades, right? So you have these oases in the central, in the desert. And now you have traders coming from all around the world, from all around parts of Asia, going to other places in the Middle East. So the Wadi was like mandatory stopover. And these traders promote some exchanges of tangible and intangible goods. In terms of intangible goods, we have changes of knowledge, wisdom. And a very important one for us was a botanical exchange, where we were then receiving certain plants that are not native to the region, but became naturalized. And you may not know, but the palms are actually not originally from here. They came to the region around the year 5000, before the Common Era, and they are originally from Mesopotamia. So since then we have had them, we value as ours, which they are. They became naturalized. And in the previous picture, we saw also pomegranates. They are from Afghanistan and Iran. So DGDA is highly interested in knowing the ecological value that we have in the DGDA supervisory area, and so had reached out to AESG, we are consultants, to conduct some surveys to evaluate the assessment of the next one, to assess the ecological values that we have. So we had one survey where we analyzed the biodiversity of flora and fauna, and also a survey where we have the tree tagging focus on creating a database of what trees we have there, especially the date palms, but also native and non-native trees, and create a geolocalization of each of those single trees. Now my colleague Noura will tell you more about the ecological findings.
Thank you, Alejandro. So I'll be presenting the fauna section of our survey. And essentially, the wadi plays an important role for wetland, for native, whether it's native or non-native wildlife. And so, for reference, we have 173 documented terrestrial mammal species here in Saudi. So the species expected to inhabit Diriyah are those who could live and adapt in urban environments. So we have medium to small sized mammals. So for us, we have identified 7 mammals using our trail cameras, where we place them near areas showing signs of mammal activity, whether it's through tracks or active burrows, dents. We've seen hedgehogs, Arabian red fox, and the gerbils. We've also encountered the Dorcas gazelles, and they're non-native. We found them in private farms, so they're non-native and they are vulnerable globally. However, their presence here does prove that Diriyah could potentially host such species. Moving on, we have bats. The current database is limited. However, we did manage to identify 10 bat species using our ultrasonic bat detectors. How they work is they would detect the bat sounds, then we would later on analyze them. So through the 10 bat species, one of them is called the little free-tailed bat. What's interesting is that they were only previously documented in Jazan, the southern part of Saudi. But through our analysis, they actually had the highest number of abundance, which shows a large population here in Diriyah. Moving on to birds, there are 401 documented species in Saudi so far. We've identified 37, and the low number is as a consequence of many factors, where we have heavy machineries from construction pressure, we have different migratory timings, and also the areas we've surveyed did not have water bodies, which this place acts as an important resting stop for birds. And so we have, on the bright side, we have seen some birds of prey. We've seen common kestrels, long-legged buzzards, and also a near-threatened species called the gray heron. It was very interesting seeing that one. Moving on to reptiles, we have 9 species identified. In Saudi, there are 101 species. So we've seen geckos, sand snakes, and also a very highly protected species of spiny-tailed lizards. They're locally known as lub. And lastly, we have invertebrates. Similarly to the bat, we don't have much information, so it's limited. However, we managed to identify 33 species, where we have pollinators, insects, spiders, and the best one yet was that of a butterfly cocoon, where it was just days from hatching, so we could clearly see the wings coiled up inside the cocoon. It was really interesting. Then we have on this slide the captured footage from our trail cameras, where we have the hedgehogs. They're cute and abundant. Then the Arabian red fox, very rare to see actually. And lastly, the species of high conservation priority by law, spiny-tailed lizards. And now I will let my colleague Noura tell you about our flora findings. Thank you.
Noura. Thank you, Noura. I'll be sharing our finding focusing on flora and habitat. Starting with the habitat, we categorize them into 4 types, but the vegetation community occur mostly in 2 habitats: the escarpment, where the wild vegetation mostly are found, and the agricultural land, where the introduced species such as the agricultural crop were found. The wild habitat tend to grow in undisturbed areas such as the escarpment, which are highly abundant of native plants. Though small the area is, it should be protected from any further disturbance. On the other hand, the agricultural land, especially those along the Wadi Hanifa, are dominated with date palm plantation. Saudi Arabia has at least 2,300 plants. During our survey, we observed 192 species across 47 families. Half of them are native and the other half is non-native. Several of these plants are considered as a high conservation priority, such as date palm, olive, and they are important economically and culturally. Moving on in the next slide, you can see our findings in the surveyed area. Malva, where mostly occur in areas with plenty of water, for example, like the irrigation channel of date palm. And here is an example of a healthy vegetation, healthy wild vegetation. And here is the Prosopis cineraria, the invasive one, not the native one, sorry, the native one, not the Joliflora one, the invasive one. And I will let you with my colleague Alejandra to explain more for our findings. Thank you.
Well done. The findings of this ecological survey allow us to see what is the ecological value that we have, but it also allows to have some observations for that. So Wadi Hanifa is a section in Riyadh that has a lot of water resources and fertile land. So we would expect high diversity here. However, based on our experience all around Riyadh and in the country, it's actually not that rich, biodiversity speaking, which means it's highly vulnerable habitat, it's very fragmented, and we are losing biodiversity. So it presents some challenges for DGDA, but also some opportunities. In these pictures, we have one date palm farm that has become a public park. And contrasting with a picture in the last slide, we had also a date palm farm with high vegetation coverage. Those were wild species. Now we see a contrast here. Although we don't see the vegetation, now we are seeing some soil erosion. So those are challenges for the habitat degradation and also losses of biodiversity. So it offered opportunities to Diriyah to develop certain conservation practices that could enhance the habitat connectivity, the habitat restoration, and we could see then diversity of plants that are coming from the escarpment where the native plants exist, just coming into connectivity with the farms. So there is a possibility to coexist and promote a corridor, animal corridor, so for the local fauna to replenish. Now I'm going to let my colleagues Sara and Matteo tell you more about the tree survey.
Thank you, Alejandra. The tree tagging survey focuses on the diverse tree population in Wadi Hanifa, where date palms make up a significant portion of the local vegetation. These trees are deeply tied to Saudi Arabia's culture and heritage, symbolizing life, resilience, and sustainability. Their presence reflects the natural and cultural identity of the region. In addition to date palms, native trees such as acacia and tamarix form an essential portion of the Wadi's ecosystem, helping to stabilize the soil and support biodiversity. Next slide. These photos showcase the natural diversity of Wadi Hanifa, featuring palm trees, green landscapes, and wildlife, including the gazelles mentioned by Noura. By studying the diversity, distribution, and condition of trees, the survey highlights their vital role in the natural and cultural heritage of Wadi Hanifa. The work underscores the significance of these trees in supporting historical settlements and their contribution to Saudi Arabia's identity. This survey is a step towards sustainable conservation and long-term protections of Wadi Hanifa tree resources. Now I will let my colleague Matthew to talk more about the tree tagging survey.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. We have been tagging, measuring, and identifying the trees around the Wadi Hanifa. In this process, we have also seen different areas that has different management. For instance, these different areas correspond to public parks and old day palm farms. This duality in what we have found also create opportunities in terms of management of the area. For instance, public parks where the goal is to provide people with nature places where to enjoy, and the management is focusing on landscaping, can be enriched with native trees that will enhance diversity and, as a result, conservation. Old day palm farms where they have maintained the cultural irrigation practices can be places where this culturality can be maintained, and also explore different ways to improve irrigation and carbon cycling, among others. Day palms are very important trees, very well adapted to dry ecosystems. They can endure heat, dry conditions, and also high salinity in the ground. They also provide important ecosystem services around in the places where they exist. They are tall trees with wide offshoots that provide a microhabitat to other tree species and fauna that can be established in their ground. Also, they are important trees as a carbon stock for dry ecosystem. In the Wadi, potentially, there can be around 15,000 tons CO2 that they can offset from the atmosphere. To have a perspective of this, a trip to Jeddah in a Toyota Land Cruiser can emit 1 ton of CO2 back to the atmosphere. This means that in the Wadi, we can have 15,000 of these trips to Jeddah already offset in the place. This is important also because it's in line with the Saudi Green Initiative emission goals, recovery goals, and also with the Saudi Vision 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. So now I will leave you with my colleagues from the Diriyah Gate Development Authority.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Abdullah Ibrahim from the Diriyah Gate Development Authority. I'm today accompanied by my colleagues, Rakan Al-Jarbu and Khalid Al-Ataybi, who come from diversified backgrounds that serves the needs of our duties. We have Khalid with his long experience in Saudi Aramco managing and overviewing huge landscape projects, and Rakan coming from the Ministry of Environment, Water and Agriculture, who has rich experience on ground monitoring palm trees and assuring best practices are followed and complied with. In the heart of Diriyah, palm trees, they are living symbols of Saudi heritage, resilience, and prosperity. For centuries, these have provided shade, nourishment, and a sense of identity to the people of the historic land. Did you know that Saudi Arabia is a home to over 34 million date palm trees? 7.7 million are in Riyadh, contributing to 27% of the global palm population, producing more than 1.6 million tons of dates that contributes 7.5 billion to the national economy, accounting for 12% of agriculture output, with over 300 types of dates being exported to 160 countries. A typical lifespan of a well-maintained palm tree can live up to 100 years and more in hot climates. However, the productivity in terms of fruits decreases with time and ranges between 50 to 80 years depending on conditions. Diriyah, the cradle of Saudi Arabia, has long been a hub for the cultural treasure, with its date palms standing tall as silent witness to our ancestors' legacy. As our great King Abdulaziz once said, palm trees are a blessing from God, a source of life for our people, and a symbol for strength. This sentiment echoes deeply in Diriyah, where palm trees weave together the past, present, and future for our nation. Imagine walking through Diriyah surrounded by the majestic palms, whose roots run as deep as our history. These trees are not just part of the landscape, they are part of who we are, embodying the spirit of growth and endurance that defines Saudi Arabia. Of course, we can see the palm tree in our Saudi emblem, which is a symbol of growth and prosperity. Historically, palm trees have been essential to life in the Arabian Peninsula, providing dates for food, shade, and materials for building. They symbolize resilience and endurance, qualities that reflect the strength and endurance of the Saudi people and the nation's deep roots and tradition. Together, palm trees and the founding day symbolizes the deep connection to Saudi Arabia's history, its cultural heritage, and the resilience and unity that shaped the kingdom into what it's today. It's one of the 5 symbols of the founding day. This all by default obliges us Saudis and non-Saudis to serve this duty, and this was done through the establishment of our Palm and Native Tree Unit, which is dedicated to overseeing the care, operations, and movement of palm and native tree across our huge prominent project, the Diriyah Gate. We are ensuring they remain a symbol of vitality and heritage. DGDA, the Diriyah Gate Development Authority, has developed and implemented standard operating procedures that guarantee the highest standards of maintenance and preservation are done for these iconic trees. This work is carried out with direct support, guidance, and close care from our nation's top leadership, emphasizing their commitment to preserving Saudi Arabia's natural and cultural legacy. We collaborate closely with the community of Diriyah and the Ministry of Environment, Water and Agriculture, and our subject matter experts who are from the people of Diriyah, to create a shared vision for sustainability and environment stewardship while honoring the traditions that these trees represent. Palm trees are more than nature, they are living legacies. With unwavering dedication, we bridge the past and the future, nurturing not just trees, but the soul of Diriyah. Together with the community and the visionary leadership, we ensure these symbols of resilience and heritage continues to stand tall for generations to come. Thank you very much.
Okay, we've heard a variety of speakers and we've been busy over the last 6 months, and the Palm and Native Tree Unit has been going for longer than that. Now, do we have any questions from the audience about anything that has been presented today? Yes, we need to get you a microphone to the gentleman in the middle.
شكرا على المحاضرة المتميزة اللي احنا يعني استمتعنا بيها حول البيئة الزراعية مع الدكتور أحمد يوسف أستاذ آثار إسلامية بجامعة القاهرة. ده مش ما هوش جديد على الدرعية، وده نابع من فقه البيئة في الشريعة الإسلامية. والدرعية فيها مثالين مهمين، اللي هو إحاطة الأسوار الخارجية والداخلية بالأشجار كان ليه دافع مهم. الدافع الأول هو حماية الدرعية من التيارات الهوائية المحملة بالرمال والأتربة، وده كان ذكاء. ليه؟ لأن ما كان عنديش أنا مصدات طبيعية، ما عنديش جبال تحمي بقى الدرعية من الرمال والأتربة، فكان لابد من وجود حل، وهو الأشجار، أشجار النخيل اللي كانت موجودة فبتعمل حائط صد للرياح والمحملة بالرمال والأتربة. الأمر الثاني هو يعني متنفس للأكسجين اللي بيطلع والحفاظ على البيئة. حاجة تانية هو استغلال جميع الأشجار اللي كانت موجودة في الدرعية. لما نيجي نبص على المستوقدات اللي كانت موجودة في البيوت، المستوقد اللي بيطبخوا عليه أو المستوقدات الحمامات العامة، كان بيمنع استخدام الأشجار الحية أو الأشجار الخضراء في عملية وقود. ليه؟ لأن ده كان بيلوث البيئة، وده موجود في فقه البيئة في الشريعة الإسلامية، اللي هو عدم استخدام الأشجار الخضراء. فده كان ميزة كويسة هنا، إنه كان بيعملوا عملية تجفيف للأشجار اللي هي منتهية وبيتم استخدامها وتوزيعها على البيوت في الدرعية، وده كان بيحافظ على البيئة في الدرعية. شكرا.
Okay. Any more questions?
Maybe you could explain to the others in the audience. Okay.
Just the explanation of the situation today.
Okay.
Everyone.
Are there any questions? Yes. Yes, we have.
Hello, I'm Dr. Karina Al-Taif from the Institute of Environment Studies and Research of the Lebanese American University. Thank you very much for this interesting presentation. I was wondering on which types of lands is this natural heritage primarily situated? Public, private, etc. And also you've mentioned several actions for preserving natural heritage, but is there a clear vision and strategy as it's the case for the built-up heritage? And also I would like to know if agriculture is included in such initiatives. Thank you.
Great, thank you. There's a lot to unpack there. So I think we'll start by saying that we're working primarily on the development lands that occur around At Taref World Heritage property. So the aim is for there to be public access in the future, and we're working to rejuvenate, rehabilitate as we can. But you addressed an important point that within Diriyah Foundation, our strength is certainly cultural heritage. So we have a very strong foundation when it comes to the conservation of the cultural heritage of Diriyah and At Taref in particular. And so now we're developing our natural heritage. And this key piece of work that we're presenting today is our baseline. So it's our baseline that will then help us to build our greater master planning and our strategies moving forward. So it's a key piece of work that actually tells us what do we have within Wadi Hanifa, because up until now we've known different components. There's been environmental impact assessments, for example, but we don't have a full picture. So we wanted to step back and do that. And a key component of this project is also a GIS that enables us to have that bird eye view and identify exactly where our palm trees are, where our native trees are. We'll understand the health of these resources, but also being able to map and identify our more sensitive areas. So we had the fantastic presentation from our Noras here. We have the two Noras who identified especially from an ecological perspective, we know that escarpment is very significant because we have remnant wild vegetation in the area. Now, to touch on your final point about agriculture, so because we are Diriyah and we recognise how Wadi Hanifa and Diriyah has changed over time, we recognise the significance of agriculture to that story, to our living legacy. So we have to include agriculture as part of what we're setting out to do. But we recognise that that can also have a conflict when it comes to pristine ecological focus, I suppose. So we're really working hard to balance where we can and recognise what are the species that makes Diriyah Diriyah. What is native to Wadi Hanifa we know, but we also know that people have brought things to Diriyah over time, and we're really investigating the concept of oasis. And from an oasis perspective, we're very interested to investigate and see if we can move forward with a 3-tiered system where we have our palm trees at the upper level. We recognise that we've had travellers and traders who have brought orchards to that middle level, and then we have our ground cover. So again, from the team, they identified we have some challenges where we're losing our ground cover in some areas. So we recognise that the 3-tiered system is most probably that ecological solution, and so we're moving in steps to kind of, we're initially going to test it in a mock-up area and then grow from there. But certainly we need to build our strategies around this baseline. Thank you. Yes. Oh, I think there was another gentleman here. Wait, sorry, we've just got this gentleman who put his hand up first.
I'd like to thank you first for your presentations. They were all enjoyable. And I have a small question about the kind of grain which you might help me in identifying, which was there during the late pre-Islamic era and early pre-Islamic era. Wadi Hanifa was famous for its grain, fine grain, which made fine bread during that time. If you could elaborate, please. Thank you very much.
Dr. Alejandra, do you have an answer?
This is a really interesting question. We particularly didn't focus on soil assessments, but we do know that there are different soil studies here. Yeah, I will just dig more into that and maybe continue the conversation later. But Diriyah does have studies about that.
We have a great, our strength in cultural heritage, we have a really strong research team. So we know that they've been carrying out research in that area. So we don't have the answer for you today, but we know our team back in the office are working on it. Thank you. Yes, back to the gentleman in the back area. Thank you.
Hi, I'd like to echo those thanks because this has been really, really good. And my question is quite similar in that you were talking about the cultural heritage and the natural heritage being kind of hand in hand. And I think that's a good example of how they could be. I mean, I'm an archaeologist by training and that's my main interest, but I'm also very interested in paleo environments. Ooh. And in the processes of construction and collection of these information, there must also be borehole surveys where there could be examples of those grains. And there could be examples of pollen and grain and seeds from ancient species now vanished from the Wadi Hanifa, but also those that were, you know, when the palm tree appears. Is that something that you're also going to explore? Because we're going to explore it, and it would be nice if there was
we must talk
some cross-cultural. Yeah.
That sounds great. Yes, certainly where we are, we have our baseline natural heritage survey, and now we are tiptoeing into an OASIS study. And in the OASIS study, we are pairing our archaeological knowledge and our archaeological findings with our natural heritage findings. And we're hoping that bridging that together, we'll get to a place where we have a richer understanding of our ancient past. So I touched on, yes, we have a really strong research team within Diriyah Foundation, but we need to go ancient times. So we recognise the need that for us to understand paleobotany from boreholes, but also we have a lot of wells. So some not in use, but we also have a lot of modern wells that have been placed over top of older wells. So just investigating around our what we have within the landscape. We know there's a lot of information there. We just have to unpack it. Thank you. Any further questions? Anything for the panel of speakers? Yes, sir.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
Good afternoon. Dr. Abdul Muhsin Al Sheikh. My home is close from here, just maybe 800 meters. I want to ask you about the small towers which are around this building. I think there is 2 or 3 the small towers which established since 300 years ago. I haven't seen any what it called any information all the body who not from the Diriyah, they don't know what this building. Why? What is history of this building? What was the story of these towers?
Well, I can tell you that we actually have some of our colleagues joining us today, so you might be able to find them in the audience after our talk. But I know in terms of our understanding of the defensive wall and the defensive system within Diriyah, there's a team that is working on that closer to the development zone areas. But certainly they need to understand the context within this larger space. So I don't have the answer for you right now, but I can tell you that there is a team working on, we have multiple conservation teams. So know that they're thinking about towers, they're thinking about defensive systems, and hopefully, inshallah, the information will come out to you at some point. Yes. Yes, unfortunately, we are the natural heritage team, so we don't have all the answers on the cultural heritage, but do know that there's a team back in the office working hard. Shukran. Okay. Any last questions? Oh yes, there's another question we have just here. We tried to present as relatively efficiently, so there would be plenty of time for questions. So was there one more? I also should mention that we have some of the members of our tree survey team are also in the audience today. So they've been working really hard over the last few months, and they've got a break today to come and see their colleagues present. So in addition to the team that we have on stage, there's also an army of staff who work hard every day. عليكم السلام.
في الحقيقة شد انتباهي في استدامة النظام البيئي بحكم أني أنا تخصص في النقد البيئي الإيكولوجي. لكن ما شاهدته الآن سردية عملية امتداد صناعة المحتوى بدءا من الطراز التراث النجدي تحديدا من الدرعية مرورا بالنخيل مرورا بالطبيعة. استوقفتني كلمة الأخت الأستاذة نورة حينما وقفت على نقطة مهمة عملية تدوير النباتات أو بمعنى عملية الاستيراد المنتج المحلي والخارجي. نقطة بس أحب أعقب عليها وأتمنى الوقوف في نحوها بدقة. سردية العلم الممتد في التراث الدرعية يحتاج الوقوف من ناحية العلم النص. يعني اليوم ما شاء الله كمحتوى قاعد يتقدم ما بين علم الإيكولوجي البيئي ما بين البشري واللا بشري. قاعد يجمع الآن اليوم قاعد أشاهد نماذج من الطبيعة ونماذج بشرية، نماذج صناعة محلية، نماذج صناعات دولية. هذا يعطي انطباع أن اليوم نقف على السينما البيئة من ناحية الإيكو سينما من رسم طبيعة الدرعية. فهذه طبعا جلسة تشكر. وأنا أتابع من بدءا من الأخت سارة إلى الأخ تقريبا ركان أو المتحدثة وقفت على نقطة السرديات النص بمعنى النظرة الإيكولوجية البيئة اليوم في الدرعية قاعد تعكس الطبيعة أو الحضارة المملكة. شكرا حقيقة ما قدمته اليوم جدا جميل. بحكم أني ناقدة في النقد البيئي في الإيكو سينما استعنت ببعض النقاط جدا راح تثريني في البحث. فهذا يعني كملتقى الدرعية الدولي بنسخته الأولى في هذا النتاج كنسخة أولى قاعد يقدم نماذج تسخر فيها للوطن. فهذا يعني باعتباري كباحثة أستعين فيه في دراساتي. شكرا لكم.
Thank you, everyone. I think that's it. I think we finished early. Well done. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, speakers.
What a fantastic session on the ecology of Diriyah that highlighted how the intricate dance between nature and humanity has shaped this iconic region. Thank you so much to our esteemed panelists, and thank you so much to Dr. Paulette Wallace for moderating this engaging discussion. We will now enjoy a 15-minute coffee break, followed by a very exciting session on the cultural and linguistic aspects of Diriyah. لدينا الآن استراحة قهوة مدتها 15 دقيقة، ثم نعاود لاستكمال باقي الجلسات. شكراً.